I didn't really know that the CMB was starting up. It was the first year they were there. I remember getting letters about it. I don't actually know how. I guess they sent it out to everybody or something, but I checked the box that said I'm interested in played marching. I was in marching band in high school, and it was just kind of something that I definitely wanted to do it because I knew that's in high school. It was my social group. It was the people I always hung out with, and I felt the band is always a pretty strong network of people, and that was my main reason for doing it. And I enjoyed marching. I was a little intimidated by the one show a week. You do it once and throw it away. But it's actually a lot better than high school, where you actually have to worry about the same show. It's really boring. I don't think I can go back to that anymore. I might have come to that orientation and talked to Tiffany once. She was kind of one of the people helping out with Mr. Pease and Mr. Phillips. But I didn't talk to anybody at orientation. So you had to come down a week early for school. So my parents drove me down with just stuff for band camp. And they were going to come back and move me into Humphreys and old dorms the next week. And they dropped me off, and you walked into the English Inn. So you got the English Inn for the first 2 years, and everybody's clapping up this giant. There's 3 flights of balconies, and everybody's clapping and have a whole bunch of shirts, and didn't have any idea what was happening. So you signed up, and it was band camp. So that's kind of the first entry into band was at the hotel at English Inn. And then they used the UTS buses to get to the field. So the first day, I guess we went to the cage and just got instruments out, and everybody was kind of nervous. But I remember Woody Wingfield, who I didn't really know. I didn't know even know he was a drum major. But our first bus trip over, he's blasting at the top of his voice out Rugby Road and trying to get everybody to sing along to Rugby Road, and no one knows anybody. Now that you look back, I can remember people from that time, but I didn't know anybody then. He sang Rugby Road on the way to the cage for the first time. The CMB was a big part of my life at UVA. I think I was basically engineering school, and CMB was basically my 2 things that I would do. If I wasn't at the cage or helping out with the band, or had a band practice that day, I was probably at Clark or the Stacks doing work. But I think that there was enough people in the band that were in engineering school that you create your own little niches that help support each other. I didn't really have time to do much outside the band, but I think it helps provide some structure. It's definitely a really good network. I lived with band people for the last 2 years, and got pretty involved with a lot of things. I was never in a leadership position in the band where I had to tell other people what to do. It was more anybody that wanted to help. The way I treated equipment was anybody that wanted to help out, get something done, get it done. And, I knew where all the stuff went, but anybody else can come in, and if you wanted to be part of it, be part of it. I think there was an official equipment crew my first year. Yeah. I was off. He wasn't on it. It was Kyle Singleton, Chris Marsh, and Ed Shin. Yeah. And we would have a van that we would drive around ourselves. And for some reason, I got on there, probably just because I'm the type of person. We get on a bus. I would much rather be off the bus helping do something than sit around on the bus waiting while everything else happens. I remember a couple of times, probably the first year, where the bus sits there, you're going to wait 10 minutes while things are getting unloaded or something, or we're waiting for something. I'd much rather be off the bus unloading the bus than on the bus talking. And I always felt that if you wanted to help out, you could help out. But maybe it's more about people go, that's their job, so that's what they're going to do. The staff definitely, number of staff increased quite a lot, but I think that was because the sections grew and there'd be more drill instructors and more, but external staff, there was no uniforms crew the first 2 years. I think it was just KK side people helping out. Friday night game night, I always did things on that. Yeah, it was only 2 or 3 people that would go to the stadium, and you'd be there a long time. I'd leave the stadium you go to, game day crew was probably a good thing to add, or especially after the games. That's when it gets hectic because you need to load all those things on there, get it all off, and it's the first couple years. We'd go back to the cage, and you'd take a bus back to so you'd go back through the tunnels and get on these buses, and then go back to the cage. So it's actually easier in some sense, because there wasn't this madhouse after the game right in the parking lot. I think that's a little hectic. And it's loading those trucks up at the, after the game there at the stadium. is always a really hectic thing. There's people coming out, there's tailgaters around, you're trying to get these things, and the trucks are a mess after a game day. Like, they're just not loaded very nicely. And all the instruments have to be taken in and boxed up. And that's something that we didn't do, because you just, your case would be the cage, and then you put it away where it stayed. That's where it stayed the whole time, which is a different way to do it. But I guess that's why you need the game day staff. I did it because that's what, to me, makes it fun. I mean, you got to do what you feel is fun. And I'd rather be running down the field picking up all the markers, because it's something to do and something fun, and it's a good outlet, I guess. But that's just the type of person I am. I think that kind of goes over to why I did Peace Corps as well. But I don't see it as anything. Someone was how to do it, so you got to do it. I was always on the equipment crew and always helping out, just moving things around. So I would be the guy that loved to get all the tubers on the truck as fast as possible. And cleaning up after a game or something like that. You're at the stadium. It's been a long day, but it's nice to watch the stadium clear up. And one of the first, I think, the Temptations was some game the first year, and it was the first time we had speakers that came in, and Mr. P's had never done speakers before, and we had giant speaker sets that had to be in 4 corners of the stadium, and he didn't really have anybody to clean it up after the game. I think we got out of the game 2 hours after the game ended. We just moved all these speakers, and stuff like that was fun for me. The Music City Bowl in Nashville, Tennessee was a pretty good time. I thought that was one of the good trips. It was spent New Year's down there with the band, downtown Nashville. That was really fun. I think it was an amazing opportunity for all the trips we got to do. I could travel around, went to BC, went to Atlanta. If you do the ACC tournaments, Greensboro a couple times, I think the trips were really fun. And I really I enjoyed the games. We did a lacrosse game every now and then. Those were interesting. It was a good way to just be involved with games that I would never go to, some of the smaller games, I guess. And doing it with friends that cared about UVA sports. One time, I have no idea why, but we didn't have a podium. We were short a podium at Scott Stadium, and we're all in the tunnels ready, and we're missing a podium. So I drove the Gator back at game day time with a whole bunch of people all over, through the engineering school, across a couple bridges, all the way back to Cars Hill, turned around and came back with the podium and got it back in time. The first year at band camp when they did tug of wars, it was 3-on-3, and I think it was someone on my team. I think it was Matthew White, just let go, and everybody just went flying the other direction. I was probably one of the more crazy people in doing. If we didn't have the keys to Cars Hill, I just jump over the fence and get something that we needed and come back. Or one time we were at the president's house, and again somehow we didn't have a podium, so I ran back to Cars Hill, picked up a podium, and ran it back up to the president's house. Instead of going all the way around, I took the shortcut up these woods, and so I popped up into the president's house behind where the band was with a podium on my back through the woods. That was fun. And the first year we would start at the astronomy building, and every game day there was a march down. I don't think they do that anymore. They stopped doing that my second year, but you'd march down past the AFC and then down around the stadium. That was a lot of fun. There's a couple times where we had little scatter bands that would go out, and I think there might have been some we're trying to be the pep band type thing. But yeah, that parade was always fun. I don't know when it was second or third year. We played for this concert underneath the rotunda at night, and there were fireworks on underneath the rotunda. It was really interesting. This starting of a big fundraising campaign. That was a pretty interesting opportunity. At band camp, we always had to do this show for Hunter Smith, I think, or some it was for the first 2 years. It was a Thursday. You do a special show. Everybody would get onto buses. You'd been on the field all day. You drive out to some house somewhere about 20 minutes outside of Charlottesville. no one knew where they were. No one knew what was happening. You get off, you get into ARCs, you play like 3 songs, you get back on buses and go back, and everybody was so confused. Another good band camp memory was I think I think the second year we were still in English Inn, and I was coming back. I think it was one of the nights we were at Scott Stadium, one of the band camp days we were at Scott Stadium. We're coming back from there, and I was on the last bus with Mr. Pease and the drum line, and a few of the people that helped stay back pick up, and the bus driver runs the light right past barracks, and gets pulled over, and we're like stuck on the side of the road. And Mr. Pease, like we're sitting there, and Mr. Pease is getting really annoyed. He goes off and tries to talk the cop out of like giving the guy a ticket or something. I have no idea how it ever happened to it, but the bus driver got pulled over in the middle of Charlottesville and coming back from the Scott Stadium. One of my favorite pieces that we did was when the Saints go marching in. I think it was like the first show we did. That was a good piece. But there's a lot of them that like played so many. That a really good trombone line. High stepping out of the tunnels is a pretty fun, intense thing. When you hit those first couple chords, that was always fun. I was always working with Mr. Coleman to like move things around and stuff. And our first year at Cars Hill, which I guess would be my third year, there was nothing at Cars Hill. Like there were porta potties and shipping containers. So we had 3 shipping containers where you store all your instruments and stuff. But the first, like, we were at band camp, and the first week and a half or so, there's just really nothing there. And Mr. Coleman was taking things back and forth between the Cage and Cars Hill every night. And one of the first nights of band camp, we're going up, we cross at Lambeth, and we're going to go up behind the turf field near Cars Hill, near the Cage. And Mr. Coleman's driving. Mr. Cook was like sitting in the passenger seat. I think it was Mr. Cook's first year, and I'm like in the back of the Gator holding a whole bunch of equipment. And we go up the hill, and Mr. Cook just gets slapped in the face by a tree branch. He like ducks and like gets hit. And the next night we're doing the exact same thing, and Mr. Cook starts ducking, and the branch isn't there because during the day that day, Mr. Coleman had gone back and like cut the thing off. I think that's like just like showing the like type of dedication that he had towards the band. Like no one asked him to cut off a branch, and he's like, "This branch was in the way. I'm going to get it out of there." I think I broke the keys of the Gator once because I jumped off the Gator. Mr. Coleman always talks to me about that. They're like coming to the Cage, and so I jumped out of the Gator to like tackle somebody, and knock the keys off. And so you can't turn the Gator off. So the Gator just keeps going and going and going and going. And I think he had to like pull the battery out or something. And then you had to go and get in like little needle nose pliers to get the keys out. Mr. Coleman came to the band trying to, he wanted something to do and like really liked the band. And he used to come up on his little scooter, and the scooter was parked around for a long time. And I didn't really know. I just always noticed it there, but didn't really know who was riding it. And he started off doing. It's like all volunteers with the band. Like Mr. P just like he started off doing some things, right? And Mr. Coleman was the type of person that like. He doesn't have to be asked to do anything. He's just going to go out there and do it, and he knows how to get it done. And he probably didn't know how to. I would do a lot with him because he's always driving the Gator. I drive the Gator around, but yeah, I think it was something I didn't really get to know him that well while I was at UVA. But like after I left, we'd send emails back and forth and talk some. But while I was here, I just kind of greeted him and stuff. But he's definitely really enjoys what he's doing. After I graduated, I spent 4 years in the Peace Corps, 3 years in South Africa, and then like 6 months in Liberia, teaching math and science at high schools. And it's a lot different because you don't have. You're the only American within like 100 miles, so you don't have. It's definitely not as going from college to that was always a shock, but I think that's going to be the case if you go off to do something like that. But like, so one of the things in Peace Corps, you always have to, traveling anywhere in Africa or in small like transport, it's always crammed. You put like 17 people into a little van, so being able to like do all-nighters on a bus is definitely a plus for being used to traveling in taxis throughout Africa. There's no other time in your life where you really have that opportunity to grow as a person that Peace Corps with. At this time, in Peace Corps, there's 2 times as you can really do it. It's like now, once you're graduating, or maybe once you retire or something like that. There's definitely there was a whole bunch of people that were like under 30. Maybe you take 2 years out of college or something, then you go. But most people are right out of college. I think it's one of the most valuable opportunities I've ever experienced. And UVA actually is always really high up there. So it's like a middle range school. It's really high up there in number of people, volunteers from Peace Corps, or sorry, from UVA that have joined Peace Corps. There's a good recruiter here on campus, and it's a really great opportunity to go out and explore the world. And it's one of the things where you can travel through a country as a tourist and see parts of it, but you'll never understand the country. And one thing that Peace Corps does and teaches you is just to see the country like someone living in the country would see it, and be able to travel through it the way someone living there travels. So, I can get around South Africa in ways that very few Americans ever could, just because I know the taxi ranks, or I know the local language. And this is an opportunity that I might, someday in my life, I might go back to South Africa as a tourist, and you're just never going to see the same thing, and never feel that same connection to an area. And the same was true for Liberia, where I was off about 30 miles from the Cote d'Ivoire border, in a little village that had no electricity or cell service, and you had to take a motorbike about 45 minutes to get to a town that had cell service, but everything's still generators. And that's just an opportunity that no one really has. Even people that were there on business or something, or like for an NGO, they're getting driven through an air-conditioned car, and they're just never going to experience it the same way. So it's definitely one of the most unique experiences you'll ever get, opportunities you'll ever get. Being part of the band, especially when it was so new, was like an opportunity that I didn't even know was going to happen, but it was really amazing. And again, it comes back to the people that you meet in it. And these are people that you're going to have around, that you're always going to be contacting, that you can come back, and after maybe it goes a year and a half without seeing someone, but you're going to sit down and talk like it was, not much time had passed, and just talk about, friends that you can keep around for a long time. It doesn't really matter where you are in your life, but when you get together, you can have a good time, and you can really like catch up. So that support group, just knowing that's there is really important. With all the stuff that's built up around it, having the band building so close, just not so much streamlined things. There's still probably chaos at times, but you just have a place for things, and it's a little easier. You're not getting bussed around. Having practice at either the Cage or the turf field there, or Cars Hill, there's just not much things around. So that was probably one of the biggest changes. And I guess, obviously, it's a lot bigger now. I think hearing it today, sounds so much bigger and louder than I think we probably were. But I think when I left after 4 years, it's probably like a lot of the structures and the streamlinedness of it is probably pretty much in place. And that's one thing. Mr. Peace had a vision of what it wanted to be, and I think let's get to this vision. And a lot of that had to do with some of the people that were there the first couple of years, like making that happen.